What's going on, guys? This is Kalen Chalk, and welcome to Photoshop Basics. So before we get into the actual lecture and the beginning part of this class, I wanted to make kind of a prequel video before we start that and just talk about some of the Photoshop basics. The reason why we want to talk about that is just because obviously this is a fundamentals course, and so some of you guys may not be necessarily too familiar with Photoshop in terms of how it relates to environment design. So I wanted to kind of just take, next kind of 10 minutes and just kind of talk about that very, very briefly. So if you do know Photoshop to a pretty good extent, feel free to skip this video and go straight to the lecture. But if you are new to Photoshop or you just don't know a lot of the hotkeys, a lot of the kind of just tools that you can use for environment design, then stick around and we're just going to talk about some of that stuff. So let's get right into it. So right here, I kind of just screenshotted pretty much all the tools that you can see, and you can see them right here on the interface. But by design, this is pretty much how Photoshop looks like basic when you open it up. Let's actually go right here to Essentials, and this is usually how Photoshop should look when you open it up straight out of the box. So usually what I always do is I go to Painting. And painting is kind of one of my favorites. I'll go to reset painting just so we have everything straight up. So if you go to painting basics right now, this is pretty much how it goes. So you have kind of your swatches, your brushes, and then your layers for the most part. The one thing we don't have is color. And we can add that in there. So the one cool thing about your interface is that you can customize it any way you want. So if at any point in time you want something, I can actually take this and drag it out, and then I have that color right there. And if I want to, you can see how the little line kind of appears there. You can actually put it in between. You can actually mix and match. So anytime I want to, I can drag something out, and then I can put it back in, right? So I would actually I highly encourage you guys to kind of take some time and just kind of, mess around with it and see, what you guys like. So notice right here, if I put it right next to it, then it will be kind of a separate tab like that. But if I put it, kind of in between, you'll see that kind of blue line. It will actually be, a part of it. So it won't actually be the tab. So you can actually, go through your Windows option, and anything that you like, you can actually kind of make that appear and put it anywhere within your interface. So Photoshop is really cool just because there's many ways to do many things in terms of changing your interface. So there isn't necessarily one great interface. It's really different for each person. So take some time and try to look at some of the interface, look at some of the elements that you like about painting, and just try to make your own kind of set interface, and that will make yourself a lot more efficient when you begin to paint. So let's go through all the elements right here. So the move tool, we don't need anything about that. I mean, that is kind of important in environment design. All that really does is that when we hit V or this button right here, we can just move it at any point in time. So I don't have to click necessarily on it. I'm just moving it around, right? Very, very simple. The marquee tool, that's just a great tool for selections. You can use any kind of marquee tool. You can use this one. You can use the elliptical one. Let's use the elliptical one. Right, and it allows you to get kind of selections. If you hold down shifts, you can make it the selection a lot bigger. So if I hold down shift and alt, it will give me like a perfect circle. Or if I hold down alt, it will always drag it from the center. Okay, as opposed if I just do it normally like that. As you can see the difference. So alt will make it go from the center of where I drag it, and alt shift will make it equidistant all the way around. Magic wand tool, we won't use that much. The crop tool, pretty cool tool. The crop tool, all you can do is you can make things smaller or make things bigger. So if I wanted to crop that, I could crop that, right? But obviously we don't want to do that. But sometimes when you're painting and you want things to be bigger, sometimes you can do this. You can drag, obviously like that, and just hit enter. And if you hit enter, what it's going to do is it's going to pick the background color, from your color palette. So if I switch it with X, I can just go like there, and I can just do that, and it'll be black instead. So we can actually, so let's choose a different color right now. So let's choose blue, right? So let's say blue is our background color. As soon as I go like that, it makes it blue, right? Very, very simple. And if the background is not locked, then by default, it should just make it nothing. So if we do that, right, now it's just nothing. There's nothing there. Now that's because it was locked. So if it's locked, then it will just go with the background color. If it's not locked, it will just be nothing. It'll be empty pixels. Let's see what else we got here. The eyedropper tool, very cool tool whenever you want to sample a different color, which that can be pretty helpful. So I'm gonna just put some colors down here real quickly. The eyedropper tool will allow us to, sample different colors. So you can see right there how it's changing. And you can also see right there your color, how it's changing as well. Personally, I don't like using that tool because all you have to do is hold down Alt, and you can do that too without ever having to go to that tool. The healing brush, we're not going to use that much. We do have this one right here. The brush tool is probably one of the staples of using Photoshop in terms of environment design. Very, very helpful. We skipped the lasso tool. That's my bad. The lasso tool is very, very awesome for getting clean selections. So this one we definitely use a lot when we're doing environment design. Let's say that we're, painting some kind of, mountain shape. We can easily, get a shape going, and then we can kind of just paint it in there. Right, and now we have a clean selection that we can kind of work from, right? Very, very simple. Now, this tool, along with the gradient tool, is actually a pretty helpful thing. So now if you want to, we can use the gradient tool, and I usually put mine on a cylinder, on a circular or round with a foreground to transparency. You can actually get interesting things like you can almost create atmosphere and stuff like that. So those tools kind of go hand in hand actually, and you can end up kind of painting in between it and kind of mixing and matching, and you can get a lot of just really interesting values with the gradient. So the gradient and the lasso tool are very powerful. The gradient's awesome just because again it gives you all these values that you can kind of color sample from without having to work too hard for it. So it's definitely one I would definitely keep track of, possibly use when we do environment design. The stamp tool, we won't use that much. The eraser tool, obviously, you may make some mistakes and you can erase. And depending on what kind of eraser brush you have, it can help create texture, which is always kind of cool. The gradient tool we just went over. The smudge tool, definitely an interesting tool you can use. Any point in time you want to sometimes get painterly feels, that can definitely help out. So if you go to the smudge tool right here, right, we can do the same thing in a very interesting way. Also in the brush tool, and this is new in the CS5, I believe. I think CS5 and up. The brush tool has something called the mixer brush tool, and that's also in the painting brush tool. So you have to click and hold. I have a hotkey for it, it's A, but that one also mixes too, and you get a little more of a painterly effect, which I think is actually more effective than the smudge tool, and it's a great tool that Photoshop has in there. So I would definitely mess with those as well. It's one of my favorite tools to use. The dodge and burn tool are very, very good too. Those are very interesting in case you want to make things lighter or make things darker. Pretty effective. We don't use the pen tool too much. We don't use the type tool too much, and we don't use that one because that one used for the pen tool. This is the other arrow moving tool. You usually want to use this one, which is V. And then we have the rectangular ellipse tool. All these are pretty useful at some point in time. The best one that I like to use the most, as I put it on pixels by the way, so that way you can actually see the color, right? So you actually get really cool shapes. The one I like to use the most is the custom shape tool, and we can definitely talk about that in the near future. These are ones that I've made personally, and it's a great way to kind of get texture and stuff like that. So if you ever want to draw quick or kind of blocking quick shapes, you can do that pretty effectively, and you can make your own. And I'll teach you how to make your own as well in the near future. We also have the this is almost kind of the pan tool. So when you're in F with professional mode, you can kind of move things around just like that. You can move the canvas around when you're in the professional view. Otherwise, it doesn't really do anything because it's going to be set within your parameters right here. The zoom tool, very, very effective. You can zoom in, you can hold Alt, and you can zoom out. If you push the stylus down and go from left to right, you actually have a more of a controlled zoom like that, right? You can actually take your time and you can get as good or as zoomed in as you want, as opposed to just clicking it, right? And it kind of goes and goes and goes. So I usually use that one, so that way I can get the exact kind of zoom that I want. As for the left side, the colors, the brushes, they're all there. These just help you access them a little bit easier so you can actually see the brushes that you're using. So they go into the brush tool. For layers, the same thing that you guys know when you want to paint something, right? You can paint one on one layer, then you can make another layer, right? And you can kind of, put something on top of it. But if I drag it and put it underneath it, obviously that kind of, gets rid of it or puts it behind it. Cool thing about layers is that, if you lock the layers, that's the backslash button or this button right here, what it means is that you can't paint outside the pixels, which means I can paint inside. but I won't paint anything outside of it unless I turn it off. If I turn it off, then it's fine. Turn it back on, right? Doesn't work. So that's really, really awesome too if you want to make sure that you don't paint outside the lines or paint outside of your element that you're painting in your environment. This is a very helpful tool as well. It's called locking your transparency. Another thing you can do actually is you actually link layers to it, or parent layers. So sometimes you can actually make a new layer right here, and if you go in between, you hold down Alt, it'll actually link a layer to it. And this is a non-destructive way of painting. So if I do something like this, right, and I paint in between the shape, I can turn that on and off if I don't like it, right? It's the same exact thing, only now if I unparent it, we can see all that stuff right there. But when I parent it, it's saying that I only want you to show in between these pixels right here. And it's just like that. So let me do it one more time, and now we're parented. So it's kind of more of an effective way of doing it than actually doing it this way, because again, if for some reason you don't like it, it's destructive, which means I can't go back unless I have a lot of undos, which I don't normally have. Tool presets, they're the kind of same thing as brushes, but you can say them all out and you can name them. I usually prefer the brushes because I like to be able to see what the brush is doing, but those are pretty effective too. And I only have two hotkeys. The hotkey that I have at the moment is F1, and F1 flips the canvas, which is very, very helpful when you want to be able to kind of get a fresh eye on your environment painting. But you can go there to image rotation and flip horizontal by changing mine to F1. And the only thing I have other than that too is A, which gives me my blending brush mode, which is what I want to use a lot when I want to blend in some things. If you want to change yours, you can go to the keyboard shortcuts right there, and you can see everything that you need under application menus, which are like the file, edit, image, all that stuff. Or you can go to tools and you can see all the stuff right there. So that's pretty much it that I think we need to talk about in terms of now. So it's just kind of stuff that I want to get you guys kind of just, kind of prepared for. So if I'm ever talking and you see me kind of switching to tools really, really fast, that's because obviously I know Photoshop kind of well. I know all the hotkeys. So take some time and just kind of get yourself familiarized with the program if you haven't yet. And you can always kind of come back and watch this if you definitely have any questions. But we'll definitely be going over it, because some of the lessons that we'll be talking about, we're using different tools a lot depending on what we're talking about, whether it's color, perspective, and you'll definitely see these tools come back again. But I just wanted to get you guys kind of just in the mood in terms of how these things apply to environments, and how we're going to be using them in the future. So thank you guys once again, and I'll see you over at the lecture. Okay, take care. Bye bye.